Hi friends, I'm going to talk about one of the most common questions that I get from first-time home buyers, and that is, what is the mortgage process from start to finish? Now this is really important to know because if you miss a milestone, all the time you spend on saving for a down payment, collecting paperwork, and even viewing homes, that goes to waste. So please listen up, and I'm going to very candidly talk to you about what is the process that you should anticipate when you're looking for your first home.
Hold up.
If you talk to any Olympic athlete that has fallen short for their goal, it's years and years essentially gone to waste. And I run 400 meters, not for the Olympics, but it's funny because I really relate the home buying process to a 400 meter race, where at every 100 meters, you need to have a mental check and think about adjusting your speed and your strategy. So let's get into this process, and we're gonna break it down into 4 steps. Let's start with your first 100 meters. Now, in a 400 meter race, the first 100 meters, you really have to just have a great start and accelerate as fast as possible. This is actually really important mentally, but also to get a head start. Now, as you're looking for your home, these first 100 meters, your pre-approval stage, it's kind of similar because before you can sprint and start to look at homes and understand where you are in the market, you gotta know what you can afford. So before you go out and look at listings, which by the way will be very competitive, you gotta get a fast start to understand where you stand. Now, before I go through the process of what you do in a pre-approval stage, let's take a step back here. Now, I'm assuming that you did your practice. So in any competitive racing, it's all about how much you practice, right? Months and years before the big race.
We sitting here, I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. I mean, listen, we're talking about practice, not a game.
Now, in the pre-approval stage of things, I mean, this is assuming that you put in your practice, which means you have saved up for down payment, you know exactly how much income you need to qualify for the home you want, you've also limited your debt, and you have the right credit score. So please, before you start to wing this race, please make sure that you have done all the due diligence to make sure that you are best poised for your pre-approval. So what is a pre-approval? Okay, so a pre-approval is either a verbal or a written confirmation of how much you can qualify for approximately. Now, pre-approvals are never 100%. I haven't seen it because for a lender, especially if you're buying a new home, they have to see exactly what the home's condition is, if it fits their lending guidelines, because that's their collateral in case you default. So just keep that in mind, and you'll probably have your realtor advise that you get a written pre-approval. If the lender distributes written pre-approvals, then try to get one. But just keep in mind that a lot of lenders do not bother giving written pre-approvals because they know you're shopping around. And for them to do a pre-approval, especially if they actually have to review all your documents, it costs them about $1,000 to review your docs. So they want to see if there's money on the table before they do anything serious, usually speaking, right? So just keep that in mind as you get your pre-approval. The most important thing is just for you to understand where you're at, and for a trusted professional to have run the numbers with you and to a very certain degree of certainty know exactly where you're at. So that's kind of the down low pre-approvals, and they help you also be as well poised as possible because, again, usually in a hot market there's multiple offers. So you really got to know what your maximum bidding amount is, and that all goes into, of course, your pre-approval. In a 400 meter race, after you cross the first 100 meters, generally speaking, this is where you actually either slow down just a little bit or you maintain speed. And this is because you want to make sure you have enough gas left for the rest of the race, and so you suffer just a little bit less. So in this next stage, of course, in the home buying process, for these next 200 meters as we'll relate it, is this is where you're looking at the offer accepted phase. So by now, you're comfortably looking for homes, you've sprinted and understood what you can afford, and now you're just kind of seeing what home best fits what you want. And usually in this process, you're kind of looking, it could be for a few weeks, for months, and you eventually want to put in an offer, of course, and get it accepted. So in this phase, usually you slow down a little bit and you're really shopping with confidence. Now, this is actually a pretty important part of the process where you don't want to forget about your mortgage broker, because actually, as you're viewing different properties and you're about to put an offer down, these different properties have characteristics that the mortgage broker can actually start to ask the lender preemptively, hey, do these things make sense for you? Or even just for our own calculations, it can affect how much you can afford. So for example, what area is the property in, building type, strata fees if they apply, and property tax. Those are all things that, especially if you have a very tight application and you're just at a certain cusp of a pre-approval, you want to let your mortgage broker know kind of what you're looking at. Very important, don't forget. In your 400-meter race, when you cross the halfway point at 200 meters and you've got sort of, I guess, the second half, this next 100 meters is arguably the most important, because this is where you really got to pick up speed. Because honestly, the last 100 meters, you're probably not going to have a whole lot left. So this is where you really make your gains. And similarly, in the home buying process, this is where you ideally start to get an offer accepted. And you're now in something called the subject removal period. That's a fancy word for saying there's certain conditions you have to check off before you give your non-refundable deposit. You usually get your financing, your inspection report, an appraisal. Very, very crucial things that you got to make sure are really, really solid before you take the leap of faith and you get to the point of no return. Now, this is one of the most overlooked parts of the process for buyers, because the race isn't done. Let's say you get the commitment letter that has the perfect terms. What you will see in the commitment letter, which by the way, isn't exactly guaranteed yet, it will ask usually for extra conditions. Once they've seen your file, they want to dig more into some things. Usually it's nothing groundbreaking, but there's still some things they really want to see. And you have to, of course, decide those are things you can deliver on. When you do that, now there's a lull. So you're kind of slowing down here a bit, and usually you remove subjects on a certain date, and you might not move in for another 1, 2, 3, even 4 months sometimes, right? Now during that period, you've got to check off extra conditions. So make sure that you are prepared for this. Don't get too comfortable, and you really want to get to the magic word, which is lender complete. That means you checked off all the conditions and they're ready to advance the funds right before your closing date. So this is going to be now the last part of your race. Now, as you start to cross that final turn, you're at the last 100 meters. This is where your legs probably start to feel like jelly. Seriously, this is lactic acid buildup where you feel like your legs are exactly like jelly and they weigh 300 pounds each, and you just have to muscle your way through. But actually, there's some strategy. You have to have the right form, you've got to stay calm, and you also can't get too comfortable. So it's this balance of not going too hard where you might trip or you might just cramp up. But if you're too comfortable, you're not going fast enough. So this is actually a really delicate part to finish your race gracefully. As mentioned, in relation to your home buying process, again, you can't get too comfortable and you can't get frustrated, because in this part, everyone thinks they're being picked on by the lender because the lenders are very picky. But no, this is just part of the process. So again, you've got to stay calm, cool, and collected. It will be exhausting. Sometimes it's back and forth with the document, little things that are off, but you just got to stay focused. Remember, this is the part where you're going to cross the finish line with grace and at your exact speed. But remember, you cannot get comfortable, and this is exactly where you need to stay engaged until you have something called lender complete. And as I said, that's where you know your financing is 100% confirmed. When I cross the finish line in a 400-meter race, it's this incredible feeling of pure exhaustion, but utter satisfaction. I remember I always just cross the line. Sometimes I somersault over the finish line. It's happened a couple times. And I think like with you, when you get those magic words of lender complete and you're about to move into your home, when you actually move into your home, you're also going to be on the ground just looking at the ceiling and just being so excited that you finished the race and you kept your composure. So it really is, it's a thrill doing racing, and I think also with your home buying process, just visualize what that finish line is going to look like, because trust me, you're not going to regret it. As you start to compete in your home buyer race, just remember the 4 stages we talked about and how every stage builds on top of each other. So firstly, you've got your pre-approval, and that's when you're just speeding right off the start. You're slowing a little bit down to make sure that, of course, you are looking at properties cautiously and getting an offer accepted. Then when you're in, let's say, your 300-meter part, that's when you're accelerating once again because you've got an offer accepted and you've got to remove your conditions, so removing subjects. And then you've got those last 100 meters where everything's been okay, you've given your deposit, but now you've got to just finish the last bits of paperwork, which can be exhausting. So those are all the stages towards completing your home buyer race. And also don't forget, you need the right coaches to get you there. And it's not just your mortgage broker, it's your realtor, it's your real estate lawyer, your home insurance person, your inspector, your appraiser. So make sure you pick the right cast of coaches to get you across the finish line. So what's your next step? Well, before you start your race, just make sure that you've done the practice to ensure that you actually have a chance of not just completing the race, but winning it, especially if there are multiple offers on the market. And if you've got a friend who is also in a similar part of the process, just have them over as your training buddy and make sure you can keep each other accountable as you start to run your race. I really appreciate your attention. And look, if you learned something new today, please make sure you're subscribed and alerted for the next video. And as always, please keep leveling up your living, and I will see you at your finish line.